My name is George Lewis. I'm originally from a town called Corrigan, Texas. I've lived in Houston most of my life. I was with the railroad right at 40 years. I'm now retired, and I still love travel by train if whenever I can. What piqued my interest was with working for the railroad was the travel, and of course with the benefits that came with it. And that was the biggest thing for me at the time. And with the people that I've met on the way, I could have never met them otherwise. So the railroad really opened doors for me. And then when I realized to be a Pullman porter and what it meant to railroading, I was very, very, very happy that I chose this career. And it was hard for me to leave it after 40 years, and because I still feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of the many men before me. And so if I had to do it again, I would do it all over again, yes. I was 30 when I started with the railroad, and of course my job was working in retailing. That was what I was doing, and I attended college for only 2 years at Stephen F. Austin University of Nacogdoches because I'm from East Texas, and I decided with the railroad that this is where I wanted to be. It took a while. It wasn't just a quick decision on my part. I had to think about it. I tried it, and I said, okay, I can do this. And then so much history, with being a Pullman porter, and I'm proud to be from that time period. Well, I was trained to service. Basically, they let me know right away that this is a service job. I wasn't there to entertain, but I had to be very attentive because we still had men from the upper echelon from the old original SP. The Southern Pacific Railroad was my parent company, and that I had to give certain service, and I was really supposed to be seen but not heard. That's the way it was. And I didn't have a problem with that. So many the guys that was new because they changed over from passenger service to just freight service, and a lot of the new guys they just couldn't take it, so they end up quitting. And I even had one ask me, say, "Don't you feel like we are being like?" I said, "Don't say that word." I said, "No, we are we are here to give service." I knew that coming in, and I said, when I leave, I'll still be giving good service. And I'm so proud that by the time working in restaurants and other things, like especially in retailing, it taught me a lot of class, and that's what that job required to me was I had to show a little, a lot of class. And there was times when I was tested with that word, but I didn't let that bother me, because it was just that time period where some people still thought of us as that N word. But so you have to push past, and that's one thing I truly can say that I I was taught by my grandmother, and she said, it doesn't matter what a person say about you. It's what you do to show them that you're not that person they think you are. You want to be better than that. So I had a I had a village of people because I had a lot of aunts and uncles and grandparents. So I was blessed. Well, I knew very little about Pullman porters, what they had went through, especially what they went through. I knew that whenever I didn't travel on the train back then because we really couldn't afford it. But I have watching old movies. I would see the Pullman porters standing out there, and all the attire was so crisp and looking, and I always said, I said, I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind doing what they do. I said that's got to be fun, not knowing that they had so much on their shoulders. It wasn't easy. Well, their accommodations were limited. I put it that way because I remember one Pullman porter when I came on board. He was still there. He had been with the company with Southern Pacific for many, many, many years, probably in the 40 range to 45, I imagine. And he said that there were times as a sleeping car porter, he had a roomette that's called, and he would have to give up that roomette if they overbooked. And I said, well, where did you sleep? He said, well, I just stashed my luggage wherever I could. And at nighttime, I would go up to, after I get everybody in bed, I would go up to the dining car and we would either sleep under the dining room table or sometime on top of the table or pull chairs together. He said, wherever you could. He said, you didn't sleep long because sometime he would have to get up at 4 o'clock, maybe because the train is coming into a station stop and get passengers off. So they they really had a difficult time, but they didn't complain. I was told, because I asked him, I said, well, did any of the guys? He said, no, we didn't complain. It was a job. And he said, and plus, when we got home, we were treated like we were really executives of the company back there because that was the job for a man of color, you know. And I said, wow. He said the pay wasn't that good. He said, but there were so many people that knew how hard we work and they would tip us pretty good, and that helped supplement my income. I said, well, that makes sense. I remember having President Bush and former First Lady Miss Barbara Bush on board, and I didn't know the president loved trains like he did, and he was telling me he said when he was a little boy, and I looked at him, I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't think of this man being a little boy, but he was. And he said his mother loved trains, and they would do a lot of travel by trains. And I was so impressed. And he said, George, he said, you know, my mother always told me, said, always tip the porters. I said, oh, I said, well, I said, that was nice. He said, well, he reached in his pocket and he pulled out $100 bill. And I told him, I said, oh no, I said, you're a guest on the railroad. He was a guest of Union Pacific. And I said, no, I can't do that. He said, yes. He said, you guys work really hard. He said, the service you're giving myself and Barbara said, we couldn't have asked for more. I said, well, that's part of what I do. And he pushed that $100 in my hand, and I was still nervous because I said, my supervisor, we had our briefing, and that was one of the things that don't be trying to. We never did. I never did anyway, trying to work tips. So I said, no, that's not necessary to do that. But he insists, and I said, wow, the president, the former president of the United States, you know, it's such a generous person. So I enjoyed the Bushes a lot, and they enjoyed my service as a Pullman porter for them. You know, I said, wow. So if I had to have, well, they were on board twice, so I was very happy. But my other travel was with a jazz train, it's called, and it left out of Oakland, going all the way over to New Orleans. We had stops in various cities, and so I was the head supervisor, I guess you can call it, and I would have to go through when mealtime to chime everyone in to meals, and so I was standing by Mumford and Sons. They were lounging in the lounge, and I played that tune that I had to play, and they said, George, so what is that you're doing? I said, what is that little what's that called? I said, well, I call it we call it a dinner chime. I said, but to me, it's like a little xylophone or something. So he said, play it again. And I played it again, and he was talking amongst his band. He said, George, he said, I got an idea. I said, what is that? He said, how would you like to chime all three of the acts in? Come on stage and chime them in. I've never done that before. And I was very nervous. When I told him, I said, sure. And I had no idea, you know, how many people would be in that crowd. And they, I looked out on the first event that I had to do it, and there was, I think, 30 so thousand people. And oh, I tell you, and after that, it was just like we got to New Orleans, and everybody knew my name. So I feel very honored to have done that. But like I was saying, being a porter, it didn't have limitations. When I came along, it wasn't always easy, but didn't have limitations, and so I was able to grow and expand, and I was very happy for what I have achieved as a Pullman porter, and I have no regrets, no regrets. The required training for a porter is knowing how to make a bed, number one. And I mean, I love making beds, but I have a problem when I would get newbies on, we call them, and they have never made a bed in their life, apparently. And, and so, but I'm very patient. And so I would tell them, I said, let me show you how to do it. And I call it hospital corners, I guess. I guess that's what it is, where you tuck your sheets just perfect, and that way, when the guests get in the bed, they don't tear it up. And the next morning, it's very important. The next morning, you have to go back and spread up the bed because they have to sleep on this bed when traveling, maybe 3 nights sometime. And you don't want the bed to be all wrinkly. And so that was very, 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 that was one of my pet peeves, I guess you would say. I, but other than that, I would think serving food. Most people come on board, and it's different than being in a restaurant. Trust me, it's different. You got a tray full of drinks, and you're trying to go up some stairs because we worked on rail cars that had the upper dome, and you had to go up there to serve drinks. And I lost a few drinks, trust me. And not when I first started, but all during my career. And so it's challenging, but it's also you have to learn how to balance and be aware, because you got passengers that will get up when you come past them, and you might lose your drinks or your food that way. But it's just I would say just knowing what's required as far as serving your food, as far as being a uh, sleeping car porter. You know that beds got to be made, trash got to be taken out of those rooms and all that, and just go ahead and embrace it. Because I was a porter, I got the opportunity to go and work in Napa at a private home as a personal chef and also slash housekeeper when the maids wasn't there. It was at a vineyard, and the gentleman that asked me to do this, at first he said, George, I don't want to insult you. I said, about what? He said, coming to work for my family. He said, you're doing an excellent job here on the railroad. He said, I said, I'm not going to leave the railroad. I said, because railroad's in my blood. I said, but I will work for you because I was independent contractor after the railroad, Southern Pacific, decided that it was going to just, give up, and other railroads came and tried to buy us out, and finally Union Pacific did. So that gave me opportunity to work for anybody and whatever. And if it hadn't been for being a porter, I don't I don't think I've been as successful as I was, working in these private homes. That wasn't the only private home. I worked in others, too. And meeting people, they would always ask me, "Do you do private parties? Do you travel?" I said, "I do whatever it takes to get the job done." They said, "Wow." They couldn't believe me saying that. I said, "Well, I do whatever it takes." Yes. The benefits are, you get the people I've met. I could not have met those people on my own. I mean, celebrities, politicians, just you name it. I've met so many people, and people that's just like down to earth, everyday people that just love traveling and sharing with them places I've been, and things I've done. I never bash people I've worked for or anything like that, and especially the railroad. I love the railroad. You couldn't get me to bash the railroad. I've had moments while it probably was there, but I knew better not to do that, and I still don't. Uphold the railroad to the highest standards that I can hold it. Because I think about it, like I said, I'm standing on the shoulders of these great men that came before me, and they sacrificed so much so I could be there, where I am now. So that's what I benefit from the railroad. And also, the profit sharing that I had when I first started, it didn't last until it was with the Southern Pacific Railroad. And the other benefit was I had insurance, and the pay wasn't bad. But after I became an independent contractor, those things went out the door, but that was okay. I was making enough to buy my insurance, and thank goodness, I got old enough to retire, and of course I'm taken care of with the insurance there, and so I can't complain. I can't complain. The job has affected my life, where I'm still, I hate to say this word, but I still wake up at the time I used to when I've been retired 4 years, and it's hard for me to break old habits. I'll wake up early, but I can go back to sleep now, but I still feel like I want to do something. I feel restless sometimes, but it's in a good way. It's not a bad way, because the railroad, it gets into your blood. You have to really embrace it. I think that's the right word. And that's what I did. I just embraced what this job had offered me. And I'm glad that I had my nephews, and I've had other relatives that worked with me, and they were porters in their own way. They didn't realize it, and they did such a magnificent job. Because that's one thing about me. I always tell people, do your best. Do your best. And they said, Uncle Joyce, you're a totally different person when you're on the job. And they said, so you go from being Uncle George to I'm your boss. I said, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. Since this was my living, or is my living at the time, I guess I should say. I learned a lot of respect for people. I already did have respect for people. I learned a lot of respect. I had some incidents where the N word came up or whatever, but I didn't let that break me down. It didn't break me down, because I always tell people, I said, if you get to know me, you would like me. But everybody, that doesn't work with everybody. But most of the time, I've had really, really good people on the train, passengers, and they sometimes first timers, and then the others that's been used to that type service, and they shared that. Pullman porters and sleeping car porters, taking good care of them. And so I wanted to make sure I did the same thing. So that's how it affected me, I guess. I hope that I have contributed to the history of the Pullman porter by just maintaining the standards that was set before I got there. I've worked, when I first started, uh, white glove service, I call it, was still in effect. We would serve because I worked for chairmen and presidents, vice presidents of the company, and they knew, what standards were. So I have served meals with white gloves on, and my crispy white jackets and white pants, which I hate to use the word I hated it, but you can keep those things clean. And I always thought that I had to look my best, which I did at all times. Even today, I'm retired and everything, but how I look is very important to me. But yes, I tell you, just contributing to the history of the Pullman Porter, I think just upholding what has been said before me, and not trying to bash them or anything like that. I never did, because that's what I was doing. Of course, when I came on board, Amtrak had taken over the passenger service, and so the management of the commissary, they changed our title from Pullman porter to attendant. I didn't know then that we needed to hold on to Pullman Porter and the history of it, and I'm strong on it now, because I know what it was like. A. Philip Randolph was inspirational to me. I finally read his story, and I saw movies about him, and I was very impressed with what he achieved, in his lifetime. So it's to me, it's a lot of history there still that hasn't been told, but the best has been told, I think. If I had not decided to go with the railroad, I'm sure retailing would have been my choice because I love fashions and I had an eye back then for fashion. And it was just a world that I got wrapped up in. And I was getting ready to, travel a lot to go to learn more because I had some really big names. I don't think I should use all of them, but Neiman Marcus was my job that I worked last before going to the railroad, and they wanted to make me the first uh, black buyer, training me for it, Stanley Marcus. But I told him at the time, I said, well, I've gotten better benefits with the railroad, and I said it's a lifetime job if I want it, and if you keep yourself out of trouble, back then it was the thing, the job to be for a black man, and I was proud of that to be part of that too. But then the railroad called, and I had to answer, and I'm glad I did. I don't look back with any regrets uh, working for the railroad, especially as a Pullman porter. With all that history, I'm glad to be part of that history. The social changes during my tenure with the railroad was, it was not a shock, but some of the things that was taking place, I just had to roll with the punches. I would say nowadays it's probably more. Uh, it would be more of a shock to me than it was back then, and you just kind of move on to the next phase of that life or whatever you're doing, and that's what I decided to do. I don't wear things on my shoulder, or whatever on my sleeve, I guess you would say. I just try to work it out, and I know that life is not going to always be a bed of roses. And so with that, I decided, I said, well, whatever come my way, I'm going to deal with it. And I've had to deal with some problems with younger people coming on the job because a lot of them didn't like the way I was telling them what they had to do. And I don't think we should do it that way. We should. I said, well, this is the way it's been done for hundreds of years. But I said, I said, I'm not telling you we have to be antiquated, but we do have to be, socially acceptable with when guests come on board. I said, you're here to serve, not to be part of the party. So I had that problem too with people couldn't separate their working and then their times when they must be on duty as whatever they were doing. If they were a Pullman porter or whatever they were doing, they had to be, you know, people will remember the good times on the train long after they have forgotten their trip. So I was very aware of that. Young people, I was always formal. Mr. This and Mrs. That, but they like to call people by their first name, and it's okay if the person is okay. If the passenger is comfortable with it, that's fine. But I personally, I was trained to always, if you keep your distance, you can do it by just being yes sir, no sir, whatever. And plus, I'm from the South, so that didn't come hard for me. And I wish that young people, even no matter what job they're working, especially on passenger service, and I won't call the name of that train passenger service, but they could be a little bit more friendly. Yeah? They could take their job serious, and I think that's probably the problem that people are not taking their job as serious as they used to. Because I love my job as working on the railroad. I did, nothing to me was better than that. So that's what impacted me. I recommend young people to apply at the railroad as a career because it can be a life-changing job. I mean, if you go on there with the intentions that I'm going to learn everything, and there's more than just the rail cars that I worked on. They have other jobs, but I would love for them to get into the commissary part of it and become chefs, waiters, or whatever they want to be, and Pullman porters. Don't give that up because that's to me what we did is a dying art. And I would love to see it still alive. And I hope one day I've had two of my nephews I think worked with me on the railroad and they enjoyed it and I hope they would tell their children about it and pursue and tell them to pursue a career as a you know Pullman porter or waiter or chef or whatever. It's a great job. It really is. When I think about it, I can compare Pullman porter as being a butler uh, because it's a job that's people have to have the personality to do. And I always thought that butlers were very, professional and they had a good job. You're working inside, think about it. And I always, I was always curious about if I would fit in as a butler, but I think I would have because our jobs are not that different. Yes, they work in the house, I work on a train. Yes, we take care of people. That's what I do on the train. And and you just had to keep a standard. That's all. It gets you through. It gets you through. And once you give you show that you can do a job. You have a career there, and people have to start looking that way again. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being, in the serving business. I guess service business. I think I'm saying it right. Forgive me, but anyway, yeah. Don't think about oh, I got to be an accountant, or I got to be this, I got to be that. You can be whatever you want to be, but think about railroading. Oh, we need some good people on the railroad. I would like to for everyone to know that if you're not sure what you want your career to be, you think about coming to work for the railroad. Railroads still take good care of their employees. It's just like you can go to any job and you're gonna have ups and downs, but you do not take it to heart. You have to stop and think about it, and that's what I always did. I said, well, maybe it's me. People don't want to do that. Put the blame on themselves when something go wrong. They'd rather blame anybody they work with or whatever. Don't do that. Just be yourself, do your job, stay out of trouble, don't create trouble, and you'll be okay. Trust me on that. You'll be okay.